From a man who turned Miami into his personal art gallery, leaving drained, dismembered remains arranged like sculptures across the city, to the most powerful investigative force on the planet with pattern recognition systems specifically designed to catch theatrical killers. In this video, we're going to explore whether the real-life FBI could catch the ice truck killer. First up, we got theatrical displays versus pattern recognition systems. Brian Moser transformed murder into performance art, leaving elaborately staged body parts across Miami as if the entire city was his exhibition space. In the series, Brian Moser operated as the ice truck killer throughout season 1 of Dexter. He drained victims of blood completely, dismembered bodies with surgical precision, and displayed body parts in public locations across Miami. The killer refrigerated body parts to preserve them, used an ice truck to store and transport remains, and let victims pose in high-visibility public places to send messages. Each crime scene looked staged, deliberate, and designed to generate maximum attention. This approach guaranteed visibility. Brian treated murder like sculpture, with every display meant to provoke reaction. The theatrical nature meant media coverage, public panic, and intense law enforcement scrutiny. Every display created evidence. Every public location meant potential witnesses. His need for recognition drove him to operate in the most visible way possible. So how does that kind of public performance stand up against an agency that has spent decades building systems specifically designed to catch killers who operate this way? The FBI created VICAP in 1985 specifically to link serial crimes across jurisdictions by identifying signatures, patterns, and theatrical elements that killers think make them unique. According to official FBI documentation, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program maintains a centralized database of violent crimes across the United States. The system was established in 1985 and is managed by the Behavioral Analysis Unit. VICAP collects detailed information about homicides, missing persons, unidentified victims, and sexual assaults. Investigators submit detailed standardized case reports documenting everything about crime scenes, including how bodies were positioned, what was done to victims, and any theatrical elements. When Jeffrey Dahmer was caught in 1991, FBI analysis revealed he posed victims' bodies, took photographs, and kept body parts as souvenirs. This organized killer pattern match profiles the FBI has been developing since the 1970s. The FBI specifically tracks theatrical displays because organized killers cannot resist leaving signatures. VICAP would flag drained bodies with surgical precision appearing across Miami within days. The system looks for cooling off periods, geographic patterns, and signature behaviors. Brian's refrigeration, surgical blood drainage, and public displays would all register as signature elements. The FBI interviewed 36 incarcerated serial killers between 1972 and the mid-1980s to build their profiling database. When bodies start showing up, drained of blood, and arranged like art installations, VICAP lets analysts link unusual patterns quickly across jurisdictions, so investigators can connect the dots fast. So the winner in this case would be the FBI. Theatrical displays designed to shock versus a pattern recognition system built specifically to catch theatrical killers. The more elaborate Brian made his displays, the faster that VICAP would have identified him and activated federal resources. But before we dive into how the ice truck killer's victim selection compared to FBI investigation priorities, if you're enjoying the breakdown so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This analysis is just getting started. Next, we're going to talk about victim selection. The ice truck killer selected victims who would generate massive investigations, choosing people whose disappearances and deaths would create public panic and media frenzy. In Dexter Season 1, Brian victims included workers in the district, but his displays ensured that their death became front-page news. Unlike killers who choose marginalized victims to avoid attention, Brian's theatrical presentation turned every victim into a high-profile case. Brian abducted Tony Tucci and surgically amputated him while keeping him alive, then scattered stage clues around Miami that pointed police towards Tucci. Each body part became its own crime scene, requiring separate forensic teams and investigations. The dismembered body that he hid in Dexter's freezer, with nails painted to match the victims, showed his need to taunt investigators, especially Dexter. He escalated by targeting people connected to Dexter, making his final victim selection even more personal and risky. He chose victims and staging that made cases impossible to ignore. This victim selection strategy guaranteed maximum law enforcement response. When bodies start appearing in public locations, drained of blood, arranged like sculptures, police departments immediately allocate massive resources. Miami Metro Homicide formed a task force. Media coverage was constant. Public pressure demanded results. Every theatrical display increased the urgency to catch him, unlike serial killers who prey on marginalized victims that society might not actively search for. Brian's approach put him at the center of the biggest investigation Miami had seen in years. While Brian Moser was selecting victims designed to generate attention, what happens when those same theatrical displays trigger federal involvement and nationwide coordination? When serial murders become public spectacles that generate media coverage and public fear, the FBI classifies them as high-priority cases and deploys overwhelming investigative resources. According to FBI documentation, the Behavioral Analysis Unit provides investigative support to federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement for complex violent crimes. The National Center for Analysis of Violent Crime was established in 1985 to provide instruction, research, and investigative support for exactly these types of cases. When serial murder generates significant media attention and public fear, the FBI can deploy rapid response teams to assist local jurisdictions. The Bureau provides criminal investigative analysis, interview strategy development, investigative strategy recommendations, and threat assessments. In real cases like Jeffrey Dahmer in 1991, once the scope of his crimes became clear, FBI forensic teams, analysts, and profilers all became involved in building the case. The FBI has jurisdiction over serial killings that cross state lines, but for even cases within a single jurisdiction, the Bureau provides support through VICAP analysis, behavioral profiling, and forensic laboratory services. The Ice Truck Killer's theatrical displays would trigger immediate FBI involvement. Miami Metro would have contacted the Behavioral Analysis Unit within days of discovering the pattern. Federal forensic laboratories would process evidence. VICAP would search for similar cases nationwide. Geographic profiling would analyze where body parts were being dumped to predict where the killer likely lived or worked. Behavioral analysts would build a detailed profile. Organized killer, methodical, needs control, has medical or anatomical knowledge, craves recognition. The FBI would not wait for Brian Moser to make a mistake. They would actively narrow the suspect pool by analyzing who had access to refrigeration equipment, who had anatomical knowledge to drain blood surgically, who worked in medical fields or with cadavers, and who lived in the geographic area where body parts were being discovered. Every theatrical display would provide more data points for the profile, making the net tighter. Once again, in this case, the FBI would be the winner. Selecting high-profile victims who generate massive investigations versus an agency that specializes in those exact type of cases, Brian Moser's need for attention will put the FBI's full institutional weight directly on top of him within weeks of his first display. Generating attention through victim selection only mattered if investigators could not decode the messages he was sending. That brings us to the psychological game that Brian thought that he was winning. The Ice Truck Killer used crime scenes to send symbolic messages, believing the references and hidden meanings would confuse investigators. Throughout Season 1, Brian left clues designed to communicate with Dexter. The Barbie doll represented the victim and crime scene in miniature. He ultimately led Dexter back to the shipping container where their mother was murdered, forcing Dexter to relive the trauma. His blood drainage created clean displays matching his vision of perfection. Each crime scene told a story to anyone who understood his perspective. Brian believes symbolism made him sophisticated, but every symbolic element provided profilers with psychological information. Symbolism reveals psychology. The cleanliness revealed obsessive control needs. Theatrical staging revealed narcissistic personality craving validation. What Brian thought was clever communication would give FBI analysts exactly what they needed. FBI profilers spent decades studying how serial killers communicate through crime scenes, developing frameworks to decode symbolism and predict behavior. According to FBI research, profilers analyze signature behaviors versus modus operandi to understand killer psychology. Signatures stay consistent because they fulfill psychological needs. The FBI documented this through interviews with 36 killers between 1972 and the mid-1980s. Agent Robert Ressler and John Douglas found organized killers pose victims, take souvenirs, and leave messages. When Dennis Rader sent letters as the BTK killer between 1974 and 2005, FBI analysts decoded his psychology from word choices, recognition needs, and binding methods. Brian's displays would provide profilers with psychological gold mines. Blood drainage suggests medical knowledge and possible blood-related trauma. Theatrical staging suggests narcissistic personality disorder. Communication through displays shows that he wants recognition from someone specific. The cleanliness marks him as highly intelligent and methodical. Refrigeration suggests medical fieldwork. The FBI would predict that he is a white male, 25 to 45, works in medical or scientific fields, lives alone, has childhood trauma history, and possesses above-average intelligence. So once again, the winner in this case would be the FBI. Crime scenes as symbolic communication versus profilers who spent 50 years decoding exactly that? Every symbol that Brian left revealed his psychology. But what do you think? Could the Ice Truck Killer's symbolism have fooled FBI profilers? Or would they have decoded his psychology within days? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's move on to our next point: medical expertise versus professional databases. Brian Moser used professional anatomical knowledge to drain bodies and dismember them surgically, believing this expertise made him untraceable. In the series, Brian worked as a prosthetist, designing artificial limbs. This gave him anatomical knowledge, surgical techniques, and medical equipment access. Bodies were drained using methods suggesting circulatory system understanding. Dismemberment showed knowledge of joint structures. He used refrigeration to preserve tissue. Brian believed that medical knowledge gave him advantages, but that expertise created a signature pointing at medical training. The FBI would immediately flag that this killer had professional anatomical knowledge. So could Brian's prosthetist background stay hidden from an agency accessing every medical database nationwide? The FBI can access nationwide databases of medical professionals, including prosthetists, surgeons, and anyone licensed to work with human anatomy. According to investigative procedures, the FBI obtains records from state medical boards, licensing agencies, and educational institutions. When profiles suggest medical knowledge, investigators search databases for relevant training in geographic areas. Prosthetists require state licensing and formal education. The FBI could list every licensed prosthetist, surgical technician, or medical professional in Miami within days, then cross-reference with age, living situation, and geographic proximity. Brian's specialized career would place him in the FBI's crosshairs. A killer displaying professional anatomical knowledge operating in Miami would trigger searches of medical professionals. Prosthetists are a small professional group. The FBI would list every prosthetist in South Florida, cross-reference men fitting the profile, then investigate anyone in the geographic zone where body parts appeared. One conversation with co-workers would reveal behavioral red flags. So once again, the winner is the FBI. Specialized knowledge versus nationwide databases tracking everyone with that same training? Brian's surgical precision pointed directly at his professional background. But if you thought that Brian Moser's medical expertise was an advantage, wait until you see what happens when he decided to get close to a homicide detective. Brian Moser infiltrated Deborah Morgan's life using a fake identity, believing personal relationships would shield him from investigation. In the series, Brian created a fake identity as Rudy Cooper and began dating Deborah Morgan, a Miami Metro homicide detective. He specifically targeted her because she was Dexter's sister and worked the ice truck killer case. The relationship gave him intelligence about the investigation, what evidence police had, and how close they were to catching him. His fake identity included work history and personal background that withstood casual scrutiny. This showed sophisticated social engineering. People rarely suspect romantic partners. By getting close to Deborah, he gained early warning if investigators started connecting the dots. Infiltrating a detective's life while committing murder she is investigating creates enormous risk. One background check would expose everything. And what happens when the detective's colleagues run standard verification on the new boyfriend? When serial killer cases escalate, FBI protocols require thorough background checks on anyone with unusual access to investigation details or law enforcement personnel. According to law enforcement procedures, when cases generate federal involvement, the FBI reviews individuals with that unusual access to investigation details. Background checks verify employment, education, addresses, financial records, and gaps in personal timelines. A fake identity requires fabricated employment records, false credentials, and constructed history. Each element can be verified through direct contact with claimed employers and schools. When Dennis Rader sent a floppy disk to media in February 2005, FBI computer forensics found deleted files with metadata showing that the disk was used at Christ Lutheran Church by a user named Dennis. Within 9 days, they verified his identity, obtained DNA from his daughter's medical records, and arrested him on February 25, 2005. Brian Rudy Cooper's identity would collapse under FBI scrutiny within days. A prosthetist who started dating a detective working the case at exactly the time murders began would trigger immediate suspicion. FBI agents would verify employment, contact previous employers, check educational records. A fabricated identity creates gaps investigators spot easily. Did Rudy Cooper pay taxes? Have credit history? Every fabricated detail creates a verification point where the lie falls apart. So once again, the winner is the FBI. Infiltrating a detective's life with fake identity versus federal background checks? Brian's boldest move was most doomed to failure. Even if Brian had somehow maintained his fake identity, there was still one problem that he could never solve. Every theatrical display he created left behind evidence he did not even know existed. The ice truck killer created elaborate displays across Miami, each containing potential forensic evidence. In the series, Brian's displays created multiple crime scenes. Each body part was discovered in different locations. Plastic wrapping could contain fingerprints, DNA from skin cells, or manufacturing traces. Surgical tools used for dismemberment would leave distinctive marks. His ice truck and workspace could contain microscopic evidence including hair, fibers, and blood traces. Every display meant more opportunities to leave evidence. Brian believed careful preparation kept him clean, but forensic technology in the mid-2000s could detect microscopic traces that he would never know he left. Touch DNA can be extracted from surfaces touched once. Luminol revealed blood traces after extensive cleaning. Every crime scene was a potential evidence source. Careful evidence management only goes so far when modern tech can extract DNA from skin cells left on surfaces. The FBI laboratory maintains advanced forensic technology capable of extracting DNA from trace amounts of biological material and linking suspects through microscopic evidence. According to FBI documentation, the FBI laboratory provides DNA analysis, trace evidence examination, fiber analysis, and tool mark identification. DNA can be generated from skin cells left on touched surfaces. Luminol testing reveals blood diluted thousands of times. The FBI maintains CODIS, storing DNA profiles from convicted offenders and crime scenes nationwide. In the BTK case, Dennis Rader sent a floppy disk to media in 2005. Computer forensics found deleted files showing the disk was used at Christ Lutheran Church by a user conveniently named Dennis. Combined with DNA from his daughter's medical records matching crime scene evidence, they arrested him on February 25, 2005. Every body part Brian displayed was a potential FBI laboratory case. DNA could be extracted from any biological material he touched. Fibers from clothing could be found on plastic. Tool marks could be matched to instruments. Blood traces from his workspace, and even microscopic amounts could place victims there. Microscopic traces of the same DNA would link scenes, and if his profile or a reference swab hits CODIS, that could confirm the ID. So once again, the winner here is the FBI. Careful evidence management versus technology extracting DNA from skin cells. Every display gave the FBI opportunities to collect microscopic evidence that Brian never knew he left. So, what's the verdict? Well, Brian Moser was theatrical, methodical, surgically precise. He transformed Miami into his art gallery, leaving elaborately staged displays that shocked the city and generated massive media coverage. He infiltrated a homicide detective's life. He believed his medical knowledge and artistic vision made him sophisticated. All of that works in the show partly because federal involvement stays muted, something unlikely in a comparable real case. The FBI is built to specifically catch theatrical killers like Brian Moser. VICAP would have flagged his pattern within days. Behavioral profilers would have identified him as highly organized with medical training and narcissistic traits. Database searches would have listed every licensed prosthetist in South Florida. Background checks would have exposed his fake identity the moment he dated a detective. Forensic laboratories would have extracted DNA from microscopic traces at multiple crime scenes. Geographic profiling would have narrowed his residence area based on where the body parts appeared. Brian's approach is surgical. The FBI's is systemic. Brian operated alone with theatrical displays meant to impress. The FBI operates as a coordinated machine with pattern recognition algorithms, nationwide databases, and forensic technology that finds evidence invisible to the naked eye. Brian thought that his symbolism and medical knowledge made him sophisticated. The FBI spent 50 years building profiles of organized killers with exactly those characteristics. If the eye-struck killer operated in the real world with FBI actively hunting him, he's unlikely to last 5 months. Once VICAP links cases, analysts profile, databases narrow the field, and lab tech pulls trace DNA, the clock runs out fast. Brian created elaborate displays because he craved recognition. That need for attention was always his downfall. The FBI would have given him exactly the attention he wanted, just not the way that he imagined. Every theatrical display would have provided more evidence. Every symbolic message would have revealed more psychology. Every victim would have tightened the net. One surgical serial killer with medical knowledge and a god complex versus the most powerful investigative force in the world with systems specifically designed to catch theatrical killers? The game would have been over before Brian even finished his first display.